Welcome back to the channel. Here you'll find the fastest updates on breaking news, shocking secrets, and dramatic predictions for times. The young and the restless. Who will betray whom? What secrets are about to be revealed? And what horrific tragedy awaits the characters in Genoa City? Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us to discover the unmissable developments right now. Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the most gripping and passionate updates from the heart of Genoa City. Today is a beautifully dramatic day to unpack the latest explosive twists that have left the entire town completely breathless. Grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let us dive straight into the breathtaking chaos that is about to change everything for our favorite characters. The atmosphere inside the grand ballroom of the Genoa City Athletic Club was nothing short of electric, vibrating with the kind of high-stakes corporate anticipation that only a major launch could generate. Sally Spectra stood at the epicenter of this glittering universe, radiating an aura of absolute triumph and hard-won vindication. This was the official unveiling of the newest, most ambitious project under the Spectra Charles banner, a crowning professional achievement that was supposed to solidify her reign as a legitimate corporate powerhouse. The crystal chandeliers cast a golden, victorious glow over the meticulously arranged floral centerpieces and the throngs of wealthy investors, media moguls, and local elites who had gathered to witness her ascent. For Sally, every clinking champagne glass and every admiring glance felt like a soothing balm over the jagged scars of her past failures and heartbreaks. She had fought tooth and nail to reach this exact pinnacle, navigating a treacherous labyrinth of corporate espionage, personal betrayals, and the suffocating skepticism of men like Billy Abbott. This night was the physical manifestation of her resilience, a flawless evening where she finally held the reins of her own destiny, completely unaware that the foundation of her newly built empire was mere seconds away from a catastrophic collapse. Behind the scenes of this immaculate celebration lay a web of dangerous secrets and clandestine alliances that Sally had carefully orchestrated to secure her position. Her controversial, highly classified agreement with Chelsea Lawson and the financial backing of Adam Newman to quietly buy back Newman Media had been a massive gamble, one that required nerves of steel and an absolute mastery of deception. She had risked everything to assert her independence, defying Victor Newman's iron-fisted control and pushing back against Billy's relentless attempts to micromanage her vision. Standing in the spotlight, wrapped in a breathtaking designer gown that commanded the room's attention, Sally felt an intoxicating sense of invincibility. She believed she had finally outmaneuvered the heavy shadows of the Newman family legacy that had always threatened to eclipse her ambitions. The launch was proceeding flawlessly. The presentations had dazzled the board members, and the press was eating out of the palm of her hand. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Sally allowed herself to truly breathe, basking in the profound satisfaction that she had built a fortress of success that no one could tear down. Watching her from the periphery of the ballroom, Adam Newman felt a surge of overwhelming pride and deep, possessive affection. He had always recognized the fierce, untamed fire within Sally, a kindred spirit who understood the intoxicating allure of ambition and the necessity of ruthlessness. By secretly bankrolling her venture, Adam had not only defied his father's suffocating expectations, but had also cemented a powerful, unspoken bond with the woman he loved. He stood near the bar, nursing a bourbon, his dark eyes tracking Sally's every movement as she charmed the room with her signature blend of charisma and sharp intellect. In his mind, this night was a shared victory, a testament to their combined ability to manipulate the boardrooms of Genoa City while keeping their true motives hidden in the shadows. He felt an unusual sense of peace, a rare moment of stability in a life that had always been defined by chaos, rebellion, and emotional warfare. Adam believed that he and Sally were finally on the precipice of a golden era, a time where they could rule their respective empires side by side, untouchable by the ghosts of their tomorrow. However, the fragile illusion of perfection was abruptly shattered by a sudden, inexplicable shift in the room's atmospheric pressure. It started as a subtle ripple near the grand mahogany entrance doors, a low murmur of confusion that quickly escalated into a cascading wave of shocked whispers. The elegant string quartet, sensing the bizarre disruption in the crowd's energy, faltered in their playing, causing the sophisticated background music to dissolve into a disjointed, eerie silence. Heads began to turn, one by one, drawn by an invisible, magnetic pull toward the foyer. The sea of elegantly dressed guests instinctively parted, creating a wide, agonizingly long pathway through the center of the ballroom. The flashing bulbs of the paparazzi cameras, which had previously been focused entirely on Sally's radiant smile, abruptly pivoted toward the entrance, capturing the arrival of an uninvited guest whose mere presence was enough to send shockwaves through the foundation of Genoa. The sudden silence in the room was deafening, heavy with the terrifying anticipation of a scandal about to detonate in real time. Walking through the parted crowd with a posture of absolute, unyielding resolve was Elena. She looked entirely out of place amidst the sea of haute couture and corporate posturing, yet she commanded the space with a quiet, devastating authority. There was no trace of the hesitant, conflicted woman who had quietly departed Genoa City months ago. Instead, she possessed the fierce, protective aura of a woman who had crossed an ocean of secrets to deliver a reckoning. Her expression was unreadable, a stoic mask that betrayed none of the emotional turbulence that must have accompanied her return. But it was not Elena's sudden reappearance that caused the collective breath of the room to hitch. It was the small, fragile bundle held securely against her chest. Wrapped in a soft, understated blanket was an infant, a sleeping child, whose presence in this high-stakes corporate arena felt like a surreal, disruptive hallucination. The visual contrast was staggering, a mother and child standing in the epicenter of a ruthless business launch, bringing the relentless machinery of the corporate world to a grinding, agonizing halt. For Sally Spectra, the physical reaction to this intrusion was instantaneous and violently paralyzing. The crystal champagne flute in her hands suddenly felt as heavy as lead, her fingers turning white as she gripped the delicate stem to keep from dropping it. The triumphant smile that had graced her face mere moments ago froze, fracturing into a mask of sheer, unadulterated pain. Time seemed to dilate, stretching every second into an eternity as she watched Elena slowly navigate the pathway toward the center. Sally's brilliant, strategic mind, usually capable of calculating a dozen moves ahead, completely short-circuited. A cold, suffocating dread began to pool in the pit of her stomach, an instinctual, primal warning that the life she had so painstakingly built was about to be ripped away from her. She felt entirely exposed, stripped of her corporate armor, standing under the harsh glare of the spotlight as a deeply personal nightmare unfolded in front of hundreds of watching eyes. Adam's reaction was equally visceral, a psychological earthquake that shook him to his very core. His relaxed, confident posture evaporated instantly, replaced by a rigid, terrifying stillness. The glass of bourbon in his hand was forgotten as his piercing gaze locked onto the child in Elena's arms. As Elena drew closer, stepping into the luminous glow of the chandeliers, the infant stirred, turning its tiny face toward the light. In that singular, heart-stopping moment, Adam saw it. The undeniable, inescapable genetic echo of the Newman bloodline was etched into the child's delicate face. The shape of the jaw, the slope of the brow, the unmistakable intensity that seemed to radiate even from a sleeping infant. It was a mirror reflecting his own legacy back at him. A massive, suffocating wave of realization crashed over Adam, drowning out the ambient noise of the room, the flashing cameras, and even the presence of the woman he loved standing just a few feet away. The universe narrowed down to a single terrifying focal point, the child that bore his undeniable imprint. Without uttering a single word, Elena's presence delivered a declaration that echoed louder than any shouted. Her steady, unwavering gaze locked onto Adam, completely bypassing Sally, confirming the devastating truth of the time. The unspoken narrative hung heavily in the air, a story of a fateful, desperate night of passion just before Elena had packed her bags and vanished from Genoa City. It was a night shrouded in secrecy, a moment of weakness or profound connection that had resulted in the creation of a new life. By choosing this exact moment, the zenith of Sally's professional triumph to reveal this monumental secret, Elena was making a calculated, devastating statement. She was not merely introducing a child, she was asserting a claim, demanding accountability, and completely upending the existing power dynamics of everyone involved. The sheer audacity of the timing transformed a deeply personal revelation into a spectacular public execution of Sally's. The psychological devastation inflicted upon Sally in those agonizing minutes was absolute and multifaceted. As the murmurs in the crowd reached a fever pitch, the name of the child began to ripple through the room, carried by the whispers of those closest to Elena. The baby's name was Ava. The sound of that specific name striking Sally's ears was like a physical blow to the chest, a cruel, twisting knife plunged directly into her most profound, unhealed trauma. Ava was the name of the daughter, Sally, and Adam had lost the child, whose absence had left a permanent, agonizing void in her soul. To hear that name bestowed upon another child, Adam's child, born to another woman, was a level of emotional torture that defied comprehension. Sally felt the air completely leave her lungs, her vision blurring at the edges as a wave of intense, suffocating grief collided with the sheer humiliation of the public spectacle. She was suddenly a ghost haunting her own celebration, completely invisible and entirely powerless against the crushing weight of this cruel twist of fate. As Sally spiraled into an abyss of emotional agony, she was forced to witness a profound, terrifying transformation. The man who had been her steadfast partner, her secret ally, and her fierce protector just moments before, was suddenly pulled into an entirely different orbit. The gravitational pull of paternity, a force that had always been Adam's ultimate weakness and his most redeeming quality, took absolute control. His entire posture shifted, leaning away from the corporate triumph he had shared with Sally and leaning entirely toward the fragile life. The protective, fiercely loyal instincts of a Newman patriarch ignited within him, instantly reordering his priorities and his loyalty. In that heartbreaking transition, Sally realized with absolute clarity that she could never compete with the bond of blood. The romantic devotion Adam held for her was suddenly eclipsed by the monumental, inescapable responsibility of a child, leaving her entirely isolated on the wrong side of an invisible, impenetrable wall. The fallout from this explosive revelation immediately began to bleed into the corporate realm, threatening to destroy everything Sally had built with Spectre Charles. The wealthy investors and media sharks who had been ready to anoint Sally as the new queen of Genoa City commerce were now eagerly devouring the scandalous spectacle unfolding before them. The launch party had been irrevocably tainted, transformed from a showcase of brilliant business strategy into the backdrop for a sordid, sensationalized paternity drama. The secret, precarious deal Sally had struck with Adam regarding Newman Media was now dangerously exposed to the court of public opinion. With Adam's focus entirely derailed by the sudden appearance of a new heir, his financial and strategic backing of Sally's empire became incredibly vulnerable. The foundation of Spectre Charles, built on the shifting sands of hidden alliances, was beginning to crack under the immense pressure of this public humiliation, threatening to pull Sally down into the rubble of her own shattered ambition. Looming ominously on the horizon was the inevitable, brutal reality of a custody battle that would tear the fabric of their lives to shreds. Elena's dramatic return was not a mere visit. It was the opening salvo in what would undoubtedly become a vicious legal war for control over the child's future. The Newman family, with Victor at the helm, would never allow an heir to exist outside their absolute sphere of influence. The impending clash between Elena's fierce maternal protection and the ruthless, unlimited resources of the Newman machine would consume every ounce of Adam's time, energy, and financial power. This looming war would drag everyone into the mud, exposing secrets, weaponizing past mistakes, and leaving a trail of emotional destruction in its wake. For Sally, this meant her relationship, her company, and her mental sanity would be collateral damage in a war she had no power to fight and no right to win. She was staring down the barrel of a prolonged, agonizing conflict that would slowly but surely erode everything. The evening culminated in a final, suspenseful tableau that felt like the shattering of a stained glass window, beautiful in its tragedy and devastating in its... The flashing cameras reached a blinding crescendo as Adam, driven by an instinct older than time itself, took a slow, deliberate step away from Sally's side. He moved through the suffocating silence of the ballroom, crossing the immense, agonizing distance that separated his past from his sudden, shocking future. He stopped inches away from Elena, his trembling hand reaching out to gently brush the soft cheek of the sleeping infant who bore his undeniable likeness. In the background, completely forgotten by the man she loved and abandoned by the triumphant narrative she had so desperately tried to write, Sally Spectra stood entirely alone. The glittering chandeliers above her seemed to mock her isolation, casting long, lonely shadows across the ballroom floor. As the reality of her shattered world finally settled over her like a heavy, suffocating shroud, the unspoken question hung heavily in the air. How could Sally possibly survive the total annihilation of her heart and her empire? And what dark, desperate lengths would she go to in order to reclaim the life that had just been stolen from her hands?